Okay, so let's go to, if you haven't logged into Canvas yet, you can go ahead and click on the project called Anatomy of Type.
What's the shape of type? Oh, anatomy of type.
So this is a sample of a poster that's showing the anatomy of the type Gotham.
That's awesome.
And so you can click on a new tab, or I'll just do it for you. And if you search Google and you search anatomy of type, you often get the anatomy of type in something similar. It kind of looks like elementary school lines, and it shows you the parts, and it shows you usually on the word typography. We're going to mix it up a little bit, and you're going to make a poster. The poster can be laid out similar to this. So if you haven't taken a lot of computer classes or design classes, you can kind of use this as a guide, but this is not a requirement. So again, you have a little bit of freedom. Let's talk about what some of the musts are. So you have to choose one of the following typefaces, and you can choose from the list. And then you need to create, it's called a type study. So we're studying this typeface on an A3 size artboard in Illustrator. So let's go ahead and open up Illustrator now, and we'll get that started. You'll have to log in like we did before. It's very slow.
A3 poster, right? So you did that.
Does everyone else's Illustrator take this long to open?
Yeah, it always takes
Bounce, see bounce, see bounce, see bounce. I should always remember to just open this first. Or pause the video. All right, it was a long time. So we're gonna create new like we have in the past. And A3 already showed up on mine because it says recent. So if you have recent, it might be there. If not, again, it's under print. You can click to see more, choose A3. Again, I like to put it to inches just because then I know the measurements that it's going on. And then as long as you click print or used what you used before, the color mode down here should say CMYK. And then create. So that should set you up on the right size artboard to create the project. I'm going to go back to Canvas and go over some of the requirements. So you have to have the name of the typeface or the font. So basically that's, one of these names. Here it says Times and Times New Roman. It should say Times or Times New Roman. You can use either or. You have to have the classification, which you should know or know how to figure out which one that is, since that's what we worked on all last week. You're going to have to do a little bit of research. So I had you choose these particular typefaces because you can find information out about them. So got to research who the designer of the typeface was, what year it was created. You're going to find 2 to 5 paragraphs about it, and you can copy and paste that information. This is not that you're reading that information and memorizing it, but I want you to be able to use that information because it's type and you're designing with type, so it's part of your design. You have to have all of the letters A through Z, uppercase and lowercase, somewhere on your poster. And you have to have all of the following anatomy of type labeled. Does this work for you guys if you click on it?
Yeah.
Did it open? Okay. Now there's something to consider depending on the, yes?
When I look up
old style.
That's fine. Yeah.
Just making sure.
Now, if you go through your typeface and some of these aren't there, that's fine. Not every character is going to be on every typeface. But you do need to label all the characters or the anatomy that there is on your typeface. So this is just a good reference. Is there more than this? There is. There is a lot more. I'm going to show you some resources for that as well. And if you need, like, if that doesn't give you enough to decipher the information. So in the resources, there's a fun little quiz that says, oh, it went away. Let's see if it's still there. It was like a fun little quiz to take if you knew your typefaces. It's there. So if you just want to look at this, it kind of helps you remember some of the, the vocab type of stuff. It's fun. And then after that, there is a resource. I'll go out here. It's a glossary, and it shows you more examples. Some things are called two different words. So if you come across that and you see that it's called two different things, just pick one of the words. It's fine. So this is another reference to go on. So if you notice back in the assignment, let me get back there. And I will show a couple of samples too, like I did last time. It's a little bit small, but there's ways that all these things were labeled in these letters. So all the anatomy is labeled as part of the design. So here they chose to gray out what they were trying to tell you was the specific spot, and there's a tiny, tiny label there. So something to notice is that the labels are very small. They're all in the same direction. They're not competing with the letters. So your eyes just see the letters at first. And then it's like an afterthought that the design elements are pointed out there. So it's something to think about there. Let's talk about how they got some of these areas grayed out, or how you can make some of these labels. You'll notice they're dotted lines, how to deal with some paragraphs. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is how to deal with some paragraphs. So we talked about whether if you use a type tool, if you click and drag, or if you click and let go. This is an area where you would want to click and drag. And I'm going to go find some type to paste in there. So history of types. Let's see, I'm afraid it's going to give me. So just for an example, I make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to select all of this in here. And I'm going to paste that type. So I have a couple of cues here. I know that there's more type to be shown because there's a little red X right here. And in the sample, it had a paragraph, and then it had the word, and then it had the paragraph again. Now you could just figure out where this ended and copy and paste the bottom half and paste it. Oops, I did a square, sorry. Paste it into a new type box, but you can also connect type boxes so that the paragraph text can flow between the two. So it's a little bit tricky. You have to put your cursor over the plus sign, and you get this little box, and you click. And then when you click, you get another little cue that's going to do something. So it looks like a half of a box and some lines. If I go down to here, I don't know if you can see it, but it gives a little link symbol then underneath my cursor. And it now linked the text from here to there. Now there wasn't very much left, if you noticed. There was only that much left, and it left the filler text in there, so you have to be careful. Adobe fills it in automatically. But now in my design, if I am changing how wide I want this paragraph to feel, I can freely change, and the two will be linked instead of having to remember where it was, highlight it, delete it, and get those paragraphs to work. You can do that for many different text boxes, but that will kind of help you link that stuff if you are choosing a design similar to what was in the poster. But this is not a requirement, it's just a little tip and a trick on how to work with these text boxes. Let's say I wanted to use the letter, or I'll use a lowercase d. I'm just going to enlarge this for now so you can see it. And I wanted to be able to show the ascender on this. There's a couple of things you could do if you were like wanting to change the color. You could just put a rectangle box over the top and give it a color. But if you have used the Pathfinder tool before, that's a fun tool to use as well. And in order to do that, though, you can't alter type, but you can alter an object. So you'd have to create outlines. So once you have your letter set, and this, when you create outlines with type, you want to make sure that everything's set really well. It's not that hard if you mess up to just retype another letter D, as long as you know your typeface. So I can right click and do create outlines, and it now is giving me a shape. If I want to, I kind of view my Pathfinder tool as like a cookie cutter. So I'm going to think about, I want to be able to define what is happening. This little space right here where it overlaps. If you have your window or your artboards, what is it called? Your workspace set up in Essentials Classic. When you highlight two things, you should be able to see this align, this Pathfinder, some of those things. If you don't see something called Pathfinder, you can go under Window and you can find Pathfinder. And then you just kind of play around and see what happens. What happens if I do this? Oh, it turns into an A. So you can tell it's minus the front. That's going to unite it. We don't want to do that. This right here is called something divide, and it takes all the space and will divide it up. I do need to get rid of some of these outside things that I'm not going to be using, but if I use the white direct selection arrow tool, then it lets me to just select that tiny part, and I can simply change the color of just that area if I use this divide tool. There's something else that's pretty fun in here called, not the slice tool, it looks like a knife. It's called the knife tool, it looks similar. You can actually take something and make a line and cut it into pieces. And then with the direct selection tool, I can select those individual areas. So that's another way to try to get color on a different part of one of those letters, if that's the way you choose to do it. If you want to use, they use another method of labeling that looked more like just dotted lines, or they circled an area. You can take, the ellipse tool, hold shift, make a circle if this was how they were, or you wanted to signify that you saw what the tail was on a Q. You can circle that area. One thing to think about is the stroke that you want to use for identifying some of these shapes that you don't want it to be too thick. And if you didn't know, you can take a stroke and you can turn it down to even 0.25 and make things look very fine if you wanted to do that as well. You can also click on the word stroke here, or you can click on the word stroke up here, and it gives you more options. So there was some dashed lines on those as an option, and you can click dashed. And you can, this says 12 point by 12 point. In the preview, it looks a little bit big in comparison to what it is. So let's put in 3 point, and you can make it longer and shorter. I can just put 3 and 3, or just 3 once, and it'll get what I need. And I can click off, and you can see that now you easily have yourself a dashed line. And you can do the same thing if you were just pointing to a line. Once you have set it up one time, what's nice is you can take the eyedrop tool and then you can eyedrop that same dash. So if you use one thickness of a line to identify something, or a dash, or whatever you use, you want to use the same thing probably multiple times. That's make sure it's the same size and the same weight and the same design.
I'm sorry, how did you do the dash line?
So those dash lines are going to be under stroke. So you can click stroke here, or you can click stroke here. And then you'll know you can click on dashed and you can give it how big you want each dash to be. There's also something here called arrowheads, and they might work well to have a small arrow pointing to what you want. But I would be careful to have the arrows be too playful or have too much design unless it happens to match the feel of what you're going for. So that's an easy way. They have different arrowheads and you can have it on different ends. So that helps there. Don't get crazy and use this hand pointer, please. I never noticed the cut line. That must be new. That's fun. Cut here. That's nice. If you ever have to make a flyer or they have to cut something off. And then just for reference in the future, they have different like weights of lines here as well. If you didn't have the dashes on, it kind of makes like swashy lines. It would show that. Again, you can have, when you put the title of your typeface, you'll have the name. If you can play around with, I cannot type, you can play around if you want it to be in all caps, title case, all lowercase, and there's a couple different places you can do that. So something that I suggest doing on all of your type projects is go to Window, go to Type, go to Character, it's Command T, learn that shortcut, have it open here. It probably came up on your panel like this. You want to be able to show options, and here's why. So last project, a couple of you and I noticed that type kept getting squished, but you didn't realize it was happening because you can hold shift and it'll stay, the constraints is what we want to happen. If you don't hold shift, or if you let go of shift a little too early, sometimes it can move around. And if you have this open and you click and drag all of your text, and one of the vertical T's or the horizontal T's does not have 100% in it, you can go in and type 100% and your type will go back to being 100%, which is really important for this class. Anything squished, I have a pretty good eye for, and I'll walk around and I'll be like, your type's squished. It's okay if it happens before you create outlines, but if I created outlines to this, it means that you were retyping everything that then got squished. So that's a good final check. You can do Command A or select all and make sure that everything here says 100 and 100% before you create an outline as double checking. This window 2 gives you a place to do all uppercase. I'm not a big fan of the small caps where it gives you you see how the capital T at the beginning looks really a lot heavier and kind of weird. So I wouldn't play around with that much more. A better place to do all caps and change that is under type. And you can do something called change case. And you can do all uppercase. You can do all lowercase. You can go back to title case. You can take things to sentence case. So that's just a title. The first word is capitalized. I use that all the time when I'm designing, just like the video talked about. Sometimes you want to use all caps, sometimes you want to use all lowercase, and I can't get the feel of what I want, and I'm changing back and forth between those a lot. So those are just a few little tricks throughout the class. We'll do a little bit more on each project. It's impossible to give you everything kind of in one shot, but some tricks to make this assignment successful.